So the nature of what we have to do is we have to be able to all be on the same page, function the same way, understand the culture of our church and how to define it in a way that we are able to be more successful. Because again, the end result is we want to see more people come to the knowledge of Christ. And it's not just about preaching the gospel, as much as that's important, and I don't want to diminish that, but it's about us being effective in a place where we are able to connect with people, get people engaged, and to see them continue to grow in their walk. So the first thing I wanted to do is I want to start with the basic of who we are as systems. And the first page you've got there's 4 quadrants. Systems are very much important, and I want to share with you why it's important. I want to share with you some of the struggle, because some of you, as we go through this, you're going to begin to locate yourself in this quadrants, and you're going to be able to see why some of the struggles that we've had have occurred. So first of all, you can't manage what you can't measure. And so the nature of having a system is having the ability to measure what we do and to determine, are we on the right track, are we not on the right track? And the acronym for system is it saves you stress, time, energy, and money. One of the things that I think we have struggled with is I created systems when we were 40 people. And a lot of those systems included some of you doing multiple ministries, multiple functions, multiple jobs, because there's only a few of us. We have tripled. And actually, on certain days, we quadruple. And so I want you to recognize or understand that when an organization grows more than 20%, its systems have to be revamped. We have grown way more than 20%, and we have never revamped the way that we do things. And you can either structure an organization for growth, or you can structure it for control. But you can never structure it for both. I'm going to say that one more time. You can structure something for growth, you can structure for control, but you can never do both. And so a lot of times with people in ministries, they become very possessive about their ministry. They don't want too many people involved, don't want people to be raised up. They don't want people to take on too much responsibility because you might become obsolete. Well, the sign of a healthy ministry is a succession plan, which means your job is to replace yourself. Whatever it is you're doing, I don't care what it is, your job is to replace you so that you can become available. You cannot become available. Why is there a sign on this door out here? Because why does this door keep opening? This is like the 3rd time. I don't know, but I'll look over right now. Please. When you have an organization and you are responsible for, I want you to think about this, because I learned this a long time ago. If I'm the only one who knows how to do something, I can never be promoted. I will always stay stuck in that position. So the goal is for us to understand that if we are going to be supervisory, leading in any way, shape, or form, your first job is to identify your replacement. You may not tell them they're your replacement, but you begin to identify the potential candidates and you start working with them to replace yourself. Because once you become free of that responsibility, then you can be chosen to do something else and to be promoted. You will never be promoted if you're the only person who knows how to do everything. Do you understand that? And so the game plan and the goal is always to be looking at the idea of replacing you, finding somebody else who can do what you do. Now, the truth of the matter is they can never do it as good as you. Y'all are designer originals. But they can learn how to do it, and they can get better with time. Does that make sense? Okay, so what I want you to notice here is in these 4 quadrants, across the bottom is a bad system, and across the top is a good system. Across your left-hand side is good people, and across the right-hand side is bad people. Now, if you were to chart the ministry you're in, you would begin to see most people think they have bad people. Anytime there's a problem, they blame it on the people. Well, if we just had better quality people, if we just had people who showed up on time, we just had people who did. If your people are out of line, it's because you're out of line. And that's a fact. And no matter how we slice it, every problem that I have that's represented in you, it's because that problem's in me. Leaders duplicate what's in them. And so we have to learn that it's not just always bad people. Sometimes it's a bad system. And so when you look at these quadrants, if you have an immense amount of frustration in your ministry, look what you can almost see what you have. You've got good people in a bad system. If you're getting extraordinary results, then the results you're getting maximum results because you have a good system with good people. If you are getting better than average results, it will be because you have bad people in a good system. And if your ministry is being shut down, closed, moved, not working, struggling with getting people to help you, you're the only one in it, then you've got a bad system and you've got bad people. And so I want you to notice that you can have bad people and still have a good system and have better than average results. The proof of that is McDonald's. The thing about McDonald's is this. The McDonald's brothers started McDonald's many years ago, but the McDonald's brothers were not the ones who took McDonald's to what we know it today. It was a milkshake salesman by the name of Ray Kroc. And McDonald's had opened another location and things were getting rocky and rough because they didn't know how to run multiple locations. Ray Kroc came in who understood systems, and he bought McDonald's and he systematized it. He made it so that a one-armed chimp could run a cash register. You want a large fry? There's a picture of a... You want a small fry? There's a picture of a small fry. You want a Big Mac? There's a picture of... Everything was systematized. He made it so that anybody could work at McDonald's. Now, the question is, when's the last time you went to a McDonald's, which I think is probably one of the worst restaurants and places to eat food at, because it's not even food, but that's a whole nother issue. When's the last time you've been to a McDonald's and the owner served you? Don't worry, I'll wait. See, you can go to a restaurant and the owner might be there working, and the owner might be the one serving you. But you've never been to a McDonald's and had the owner serve you. See, because they made it such a system that anybody can do it. And one of the problems we are facing and we have faced as a church is we have to recognize we're not mom and pop anymore. And mom and pop thinking means that when somebody walks in and they need to speak to the manager, they're like, oh, that's my wife and she's in the back stocking shelves. So she's got to stop doing one thing to come do something else. That's mom and pop thinking. Just because somebody comes to you and asks you for something does not mean you're the right person to do it or that you even have an educated answer. There are times where people ask me things and I'm like, you got to go see Trina. She knows better than I do. I don't have that answer. And I shouldn't have that answer because in other places where you guys are serving, you know better than I do what's supposed to happen because you're in it every single day. And so whenever there's an immense amount of frustration, it's usually because there's a bad system with good people. Because if you have a bad system with bad people, it's not going to last very long. And you get poor results, low quality products, low customer retention, and it's an attention to details. Nobody's paying attention to the outcome. So all the details start to slip. I was watching a video yesterday about Donald Trump's aviation team and how sharp they are and how meticulous they are and how they don't play. Things have to be done right, things have to be done well, and things have to be done on time. And they don't call Donald Trump and tell him he can't leave when he wants to leave. When they call him, it's, yes, sir, what do you need? How do we make it happen? They understand excellence. They understand that he's got to be places, things got to happen with precision and on time. And this is excellence. You can't have excellence without a system. And one of the challenges, like I said, that we face is we have systems, but they're antiquated. It's the way we did it when we had 40 people. You have to think about something. There's almost 500 chairs in this sanctuary now. What are we going to do when 500 people show up for 2 services a day, where we have 1,000 people here in one day? Some of the things you are doing, you're going to have to stop doing. Some of the things you're doing, you're going to have to do more of. Some of the things, we just got to abandon it all together and redefine it. But we have to be thinking about, what does this look like at 250? What is it going to look like at 500? What is it going to look like at 1,000? What is it going to look like at 2,000? You have to think this way. And the systems that we put in place, we're going to have to systematize to the next level. Whatever the next level of growth is, we got to put systems in place to handle and to accommodate that. Because it's not going to happen just by osmosis. It does not happen just naturally. We've got a plan for it. They asked Billy Graham, they said to him, how do you know how many people to hire for a crusade? And he said, I don't know how many people. I don't start with that. He said, what I start with is, what is the number of salvations that God puts on my heart? He said, and if God puts 30,000 people to be saved at a particular crusade, he said, then I staff to 30,000. He said, and every time, whatever number I staff to, he said, that's actually what happens. See, that's expectation, that's faith, that's moving beyond just saying, well, we have 150 people today, so we're going to deal with 150. No. What are we expecting? Are we expecting these seats to be full? Are we expecting God's house to be full? God said so that his house may be full. It is his desire that we fill up. And so the question is not, what do we need to do to grow? The question is, what do we stop doing so we can grow? Because the reality is, God wants us to do more than we could ever imagine. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so by that, we have to recognize that whatever systems we have in place right now, they got to be duplicatable. I've had people say, "Oh, Pastor, I'll make special this for you, or I'll make special that," and it's like, do you understand? Like, I had one person that said they wanted to make crepes for the WOW table. I said, do you understand? If I do that, we got to do it every time. And then not only do we do it for the 40 people, we got to do it for 100. And then we do it for 100, we got to do it for 200, we got to do it for 1,000. So if it's not scalable and duplicatable, we can't do it. We got to be able to have a system in place that works as we continue to grow and as we continue to scale. Because if we have a bad system with good people, frustration starts. And that's where the interest wanes, where people are not interested anymore. They stop showing up when they're supposed to. They stop calling in. They just don't seem excited about it. That's a sign you've got a bad system with good people. When they start thinking that they're helping you out. I'm just trying to help you out because you need help. That's not it. When you see that, that's a bad system. Lack of ownership. When people stop taking ownership of what they're doing. They don't see it as a serious responsibility. They don't see it as something that they need to really pay attention to. That's a sign you've got a bad system. And if they stop attending, one of the things that I've noticed is there are certain ministries that as soon as people get in that ministry, we stop seeing them. And that means there's a bad system in place. And they'd rather not deal with the frustration of the system, so they just stop coming to church. And do you have any idea the damage that that does? So we have got to understand the necessity of creating a healthy system. Now, when you have a good system and bad people, you get little growth or change, you have poor performance, but you have harmony and compliance. And harmony and compliance will still get you better than average results. Hence, McDonald's. You don't have to have a rocket scientist degree to work at McDonald's. I'm not knocking that, but you don't have to have a rocket science degree. And they made it that way so that anybody could run the system and that they still have over 1 billion served. Do you understand what I mean by that? So a good system can overcome bad people. But the best thing to have is the right people with the right system. Because now when you have the right system and the right people, you get buy-in and support, you get growth, you get profitability if you're in a business, and you get synergistic engagement. Synergistic engagement, or synergy, if you don't know what that is, synergy means that 1 + 1 does not equal 2. Synergy means that the outcome is greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, 1 + 1 = 3. 1 + 1 = 5. Because now when I bring this team together, we have a synergistic relationship that allows us to outperform what we would have been able to do separately. Right. If you want synergy in your ministry, on your teams, you have got to learn that you've got to have the right people and you got to have the right system. Because when the right system's in place, that builds synergy. And when you got the right people working the right system, you might as well forget it. It takes off by itself. Now you can't control it. You can just watch it grow. Do you understand what I mean by that? Because when you try to control it, Judas tried to control the money bag. And you see where that got him. Possessiveness will kill a ministry. We want checks and balances. We want accountability, but we want growth. And sometimes people have better ideas than you do. And you've got to learn how to find those people, solicit their better ideas, and make the ministry better. It is always our goal to make everything better. Just because it's the way you're doing it today does not mean that's the way we need to stay doing it. Does that make sense? We have a rule on the senior staff team, and here's the rule. When we come together and meet about it, that's when we talk about changes. We don't make any changes outside of us meeting together. So that means that if you have some better ideas, you bring them to the table. You don't make changes in a vacuum out there instead of coming and talking about it so that we can make the decision together. Because there might be a decision that is made in the ushers department that might affect the greeters. So everybody's got to be at the table so that they can discuss it and see how we can make this work. Once we decide, when we leave the table, that's what happens. We all are in agreement. We fight in private, but we're unified in public. And so that means that we are always at the place where things can change, but they don't change by yourself. They change with the buy-in of the entire team. Does that make sense? And so some of you wonder why your decisions or why your thoughts haven't been implemented. It's because it affects somebody else, or it's never been brought to the table. It's got to come to the table so we can make a decision on it. And if we decide in your favor, good. If we decide in your favor, bad, you still walk away smiling and supporting whatever decision the group has made. Because we are, in fact, a what? We're a team. Do we have that slide that I sent to you guys? Let's put that on the screen, please. I want to talk to you about growth. And this is what they call the concentric circles of growth. And you will notice that in the center is the core. The next concentric circle is the committed. Next is the congregation. Next is the crowd. Next is the what? The community. Now, every time we do a big day, the role of evangelism is to go out into the community and create a crowd. One of the things, if you've noticed, Jesus was amazing at creating crowds, drawing people out of the community to come and hear. So it's go and tell so you can come and hear. And so when people come and hear, that first-time visitor is considered the crowd. They're coming to hear what's going on. They're not congregation members because they're not coming every Sunday, but they are part of the crowd. They're actually interested, and they've made that first step. So evangelism's responsibility is to go out and tell them to come and see or to come and hear. Once evangelism has done their job correctly, the assimilation team takes the first-time visitors, and their job is to move them from the crowd into the congregation and then move them into the committed, where that's where the ministry system kicks in and moves them into serving. So now, if you understand this, every one of you came this way. You came from out of the crowd for the first time to come look and see what was going on, and then you came into the congregation and started coming on a consistent basis, however that was, and you became more and more consistent, and then you started serving, you became more and more committed, and then some of you have moved into the core, which is the senior level of leaders. Now, Jesus started with 70. Do you remember it whittled down to the 12? And then he had 3 that were his key leaders in the core. Not everybody will end up in the core because not everybody is that committed. And remember, Jesus had 70, dropped to the 12, but even the 12 didn't go everywhere he went. Only 3 did. So, and that's the core. So what you must recognize is that in any organization, the number gets smaller as it goes down. Now, evangelism or big day, when we did Elephant in the Bedroom, for example, Elephant in the Bedroom, we had almost 200 people. On average, it was like 170 people, 180 people that came as the Elephant in the Bedroom developed. Easter, we had over 200 people. These are big days. And on those big days, people came out of the community, they came into the crowd, and they literally wanted to see what was going on. Then that's where evangelism is responsible for, getting people in the front door. Once evangelism kicks in, assimilation's job is to bring them from the crowd into the congregation by getting them engaged, letting them know what's going on, we send out letters to people, we send out Starbucks gift cards to first-time visitors. We do a lot of things to let people know we care, which continues to bring them in closer and closer, gets them more committed, first time, second time, third time visitor, and so forth. Once that happens, the next step is the ministry system kicks in. The ministry system is the ministry coordinator who then starts to look for people to recruit into ministry. The challenge we have had is some of you have thought it is solely the job of the ministry coordinator to recruit people. It is not. It is every person's job here to recruit new people into serving. Ephesians tells us that the job of ministry as a pastor is to train people for the work of the ministry. We got to get our theology straight sometimes because we think we're asking people to do something they don't want to do. If they're going to be discipled and be disciplined, then they are to be pulled into some level of ministry. That's the next step of discipleship. That is theologically accurate in what is supposed to happen. People who are not serving, that is a violation of everything that God stands for. He expects people to serve. Because some of you are nervous about it. Like, well, I don't want to pull people in because they got other stuff to do. Do you have any idea you're hurting them? Your theology is messed up when you think that way. It is a privilege to serve God. It's an honor to serve him. And so sometimes we do have to find those people, identify them, but that's that ministry system that brings them from the congregation into the committed and eventually into the what? The core. So I want you to put some numbers to this. Within a 5-mile radius of this church, 5-mile radius of this church, there are 1.3 million people within a 5-mile radius. Last year, we drew 413 people into our church, first-time visitors. 413 out of 1.3 million people came to see what was going on. At this current state, we average 166 people every service. 166 of that 413 have been pulled into the congregation. Out of the 166, 70 people are actually serving on the Ministry of Helps. Of those 70 people, 11 are on the core team, which is the senior staff of the church. Have you noticed the numbers keep going down? Okay. Now, the thing I want you to understand about our growth is if I want more people in the core, what do I have to do? Okay. Can I increase the community? No. So that's a number I can't change. But I now have to bring more people out of the crowd or into the crowd, right? So I've got to attract more people, yes? Okay. If I attract 826 people, I double the 413. What should I expect to happen to every number? So now that means I'll end up with 22 people in the core, right? Okay. You now understand basic marketing. Basic marketing. Here's what you don't understand. If I double the core number, I'll double every number that goes up. It works both directions. And this is what people don't know about church. They don't know this. They think, well, if I just get more people out of the crowd, more evangelism, more evangelism, more evangelism. Do you realize that we are one of the few churches in this town that could say they had 400 first-time guests. That's almost 40 first-time visitors every single month. When I say that to other pastors, they're like, really? So what that tells me is we're doing a pretty good job, not as good as we could. But we're getting people to come in. But for whatever reason, when they come in, they're not. Now, watch this. If I can pull more people into committed from the congregation, then when that committed number goes up, the congregation number goes up. So does the core number. Anywhere in these numbers, if I increase it, all the other numbers increase with it. It pulls in and it pushes out. And this is what's different about sales. In terms of like, when you deal with salespeople, just because you hire more salespeople does not mean your numbers go up. In church, the more people you get into the committed, the greater the congregation grows and the greater the crowd. It pushes both directions. And so what I want to be careful of is I don't want you to think we're all about numbers, because that's not what it is. I'm all about effectiveness and efficiency. And if we're called to reach, there are 1.3 million people within 5 miles. Do you really believe that the quality of word we get here is only for 166 people? Of that 1.3 million? 1.3 million. That's with an M, y'all. We are to be more effective, but we have to have systems in place that literally drive this process like it's supposed to be. Because you're not going to want to stay. Listen, if a person comes through the door that wants to hear the truth of God's word, they'll stay. Most of you, the reason why you stayed is because you wanted to hear the truth. You could care less if the floors were swept. You could care less if anything. But do you realize you are only, how many people in this room? 20? You are 20 people out of 1.3 million. The majority of the other people get offended when the bathroom is not clean. They have a problem when people won't smile at them. It took everything they had to get here. Satan whooped their tail getting here. And for you to look at them without a smile on your face. Do you understand what I'm saying? For you to work in a kids ministry and not realize how significant that is for a parent to be able to see the kids area and realize how nice it looks and they feel comfortable leaving their kid there. So when they're sitting here receiving the word, their head is not going, hope my kid's okay. Hope my kid's okay. Hope my kid's okay. Because Satan will sit right next to them and go, you know your kid's not all right. Did you see how dirty that thing was? Your kid's probably picking up germs, not dropping them off. See, what we do, every aspect of what we do, from the sound booth to the camera to the ushers to the greeters to the wow table to the kids area, every aspect of ministry you do is working a system of bringing people through this funnel. Wherever it's broken, we're going to see it happen through all the numbers. So now my responsibility is to bring more people into the core. Because as I expand the core, guess what happens to all the rest of the numbers? Your job is to expand the committed. Bring more people into serving. Your ministry never has enough people serving. Never. You will never be able to say, oh, we got enough people. Never. That's right, man. It's not even possible. Because as we grow to 500, to 1,000, who's going to do this? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Some of the things you're doing by hand won't be able to be done by hand anymore when there's thousands of them. What do you do when we have 100 first-time visitors in one day? Do you see my point? The reason why we don't have 100 first-time visitors in one day is because we're not prepared to have 100 first-time visitors in one day. Spiritual preparedness. We've got to be ready. And so this is why we spend so much time trying to help people understand it's important for you to serve. Because as this 70 number goes up, every other number goes up with it. So now it's not all about just going out and getting new converts, so to speak. It's about developing the ones we have. Because when we pull them out of the congregation, guess what happens? That we pull more from the crowd. And the more we pull from the crowd, the more come from the... Do you see it? So now this is where I'm trying to bring you up to a place of understanding what it is that we are trying to do, why we do the things that we do. When we do a big day, like the Elephant in the Bedroom or a special relationship series, what do you think I'm trying to do? I'm trying to go into the community and draw a crowd. Once we draw the crowd, I'm dependent upon you guys through your systems, your ministries, and things that you do to take that crowd and welcome them into the... And when they're part of the congregation and they're serving and they're attending and they're giving, then what am I trying to do now? Pull them into the committed. Nobody takes care of the church. This is where it starts out like this. When they're in the crowd, they come in and they say, oh, we like your church. When they get into the congregation, they say, oh, we like the church. And when they get into the committed and the core, they start saying, we love our. It goes from your church, the church, our church. And when people start saying our church, guess where they are? There's nothing like being sold out to something you serve in. This is why if somebody wants to be a senior leader or a supervisor or anything like that, they cannot do it if they don't tithe. If you don't support the organization, you can't lead it. And we have been burned so many times by people who want to lead, want to be in charge, want to call some shots, but they do not tithe. And so that's why we don't do that, because that's an ultimate sign of their commitment level. If they're committed, they'll give and they'll sow seed. If they're not committed, they won't. And I guarantee you, any person that's pulled into the committed or the core that isn't tithing, that isn't really supporting the ministry, they will get offended at something and walk away. Any questions on that? You have to have questions, because there's no way if I dropped all this fast that you can understand it. Some of the senior team has heard this 50 million times, but I know some of you have seen this for the first time. Yes?
When we talked about doubling the numbers, did you say from any point that
Yes.
it?
Yes.
So even if the committed double, that means the core will double too, even though
Yes.
it's not up, up and down?
Yes. Anywhere in this thing, if we somehow got every person who serves to find one person that will serve, it will change. It will double every number all the way down the line. We'll end up with about 22 people in the core, because think about this. One person can only manage with so many people.
Right.
So if you double the ministry of helps, you're going to have to double its leadership. And if you double the ministry of helps and double the leadership, that's going to pull more people into the congregation.
Right.
Because now more people are serving, we are able to offer more programs, we're able to do more, we're able to operate more in excellence. Now the things that we missed, we don't miss anymore. Now we're short-staffed, we're not struggling, running around trying to figure out how to make it up. Now all of a sudden everything runs more efficiently, and now we grow faster. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the longer we sit here with people who won't serve, they are literally impeding the growth process. Now, will you get every person to serve? No. Some people are stubborn. They are hard-headed, just like we talked about today. They just refuse to grow up. But I believe that there are plenty of people who want to serve. And here's something that I've noticed here recently as well. For some reason, it's not easy to serve here. And it should be. It should be easy. Somebody wants to serve, it should be easy. Now, they might not be able to serve in the core. They may not be able to jump to the top. But if somebody says, I want to serve, it should not take long to say, we got a spot for you. And for some reason, it's seeming like it's taken a lot for some people to actually get engaged. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's something we got to change.
Where do you see that coming?
Where do I see what?
The problem of it's taking too long.
I think our process is messed up. I think we got to come up with a different process. What that needs to look like, I don't know. And that's a conversation that we're going to start having over the next few weeks of how to revamp some of this stuff to get us to where we need to be. Because I feel like if a person wants to serve, we got to get them engaged or they'll lose interest. They'll just walk away and go do something else or not serve, or they'll feel like we don't want them and they'll leave. So it just means the system is bad. And we have to come up with a better way of getting people engaged. Any questions? Anybody else?
I got one. Is the
Mhm.
5 miles significant, or was that just to throw the one?
Most people in Arizona, people don't like to drive. I don't know what that's all about. They just don't like to drive. So for the most part, most everybody who's here at our church comes from within 5-mile radius, which means it's a 10-mile diameter in every direction, epicenter being here. So the significance of that is to let you know there's 1.3 million people within 5 miles. That's a lot of folks that are, and if you go about a mile in any direction from this church, we are the only non-denominational church within a mile.
So why is it we don't do so good on outreach?
Bad system. I don't know. These are the questions that I struggle with. And that's why we're having these meetings. That's why I'm talking to all of you. That's why we're going to get to the bottom of it over the next month or so, because we have to come up with, it's got to be a combination. In other words, I can't put it on evangelism to say they got to come up with 826 people. Because a church our size, statistically speaking, a church our size should bring 5 people per 100. So if we only have 160 people, we should have on average 8 people per week coming into our church as first-time visitors. So we do pretty close to that. So it's not necessarily altogether evangelism. The real bottleneck, the real problem, is this committed and court. And I have been teaching and preaching and screaming to the senior team about bringing people into the core, bringing people into ministry of helps, and it's not happening. And I'm just tired of waiting. That's why we're having this meeting. Because I feel like a lot of the things that I've taught have never fallen on your ears. And now I'm personally going to take the time to teach you the things that y'all need to know. The next meeting we're going to have, I'm going to teach you on how to recruit and how to find people. I mean, we're going to go through this thing where you guys are going to understand exactly what we're doing and how to do it, so that I can take the stress off your back. Because after talking to some of you, I can tell you're extremely stressed because the ministry you have has never changed. And it's being done in a way that's causing immense amount of frustration. We are reorganizing the church. There's going to be major shifts going to happen. People are going to be changed into different positions. Things are going to be moved around. The deck's going to get reshuffled. We are going through a major reorganization. Why? Because we've changed more than 20%. We've grown. We've almost quadrupled. We cannot do it the same way. And so we have to understand that all this stuff, system-wise, you need to be thinking about what systems are we doing? We got to stop. We can't do it anymore this way. What new systems do we have to put in place? What do we have? You may not know how to do it, but at least you got to start thinking about what do we need to do, and start realizing maybe somebody's not going to come in and serve at your level. They're not going to be here every service. But maybe they're here 2 services a month and they're willing to sweep. Let that be it. Make a position, call it the sweeper, let them do it. Whatever people are willing to do, let them bring their level of commitment to the organization, so that they're now being pulled into. And I guarantee you, anybody that starts serving God is going to love what happens in their life when they start serving God, minus the attack. So you understand that by not building, because here's the thing. Do you know how long we've had 70 people serving? It's fluctuated between 60 and 70 people for the last year, I believe it's been. We have got to grow in those who are serving. And what happens is people get into serving, and no disrespect or offense intended, but let's take ushers, for example. And obviously, Trina just got into leading ushers, so it's not any relation to her. But People would get into ushers and die there. They would just die there. I mean, they'd serve there until they were just burnt out and dead. That's not the way they're supposed to be. They might start in ushers and they might see, oh, assimilation has an opening for whatever, and I think I would love to do that. They should be able to move up the ladder to different positions and grow. That's not happening. We have over 50 positions right now, 50, that need filling. How many of you know what all 50 are? See my problem? We don't have a lack of needs. We don't have a lack of variety. What we have is a lack of communication, we have a lack of understanding, and we have terrible systems. The system we had worked when we could say to everybody, hey, we're having a movie night on Thursday, and somebody would call and tell a tour, and then the tour would call and tell 2 people, and those 2 people would call and tell 10 people, and next thing you know, everybody in our church knew we had a movie night. That's not the way it works anymore. There are people in our church that nobody knows who they are. So now we have to have systems in place to communicate to those people that we're having movie night. And it's got to be through social media. It's got to be through the commercials on the screen. You know what I'm saying? There's got to be a system in place. How do we communicate to the masses? It used to be we could call everybody. If we canceled service, we'd call everybody and say, we canceled service. You can't do that now. We got 160-something people in here. We don't know everybody. So in order to communicate to different people about different things, we have to have systems in place of how to do that. That means we have more social media. That means we have more email blasts. That means we have more marketing. That means we have more communications from the pulpit. We've got to have systems in place to deal with the expansion and growth. That means when we used to just call everybody, we can't do that anymore. The system has to change. And a lot of you, the system you're working in, it's going to have to change. But here's the problem. I can't tell you what that's going to have to look like because I'm not in it. You know, you serve, you're in it, you're going to have to talk with us and say, okay, I think if we change this, that would work. All I can then tell you is, well, we tried that, that didn't work. Or we could do that, but we're going to have to do it this way. Do you follow what I'm saying? Now I do some tweaking to help us get there, but I can't do the heavy lifting. The heavy lifting is going to have to be done by the people who are in the ministry who know it better than I do. Because I could not go and tell Trina how to run ushers anymore. I'm not there. I'm not involved with it. I'm not hand-to-hand with it. She knows better. Does that make sense? Any questions before I go into the next thing? Yes, sir.
I know we run some commercials for like during the announcements for, come volunteer if you're interested in signing up with sound or with kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have that connection card. But it doesn't lift all 50.
Right.
So there's, I guess it's the core
Mm-hmm.
areas
Right.
in which affects folks.
Right.
Is there any way, and I think you hit it on the nail when you said with social media, it's got to be a more larger scale for us to get people. We have to ignite their response.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So, I mean, when they first come and their first time visitor, they get the free gift. Is there any way that we could, just as a suggestion or thought, if they like us on Facebook, is there something that we could, there's got to be some type of incentive. What's in it for me, for them to be a part, and that's I think that would be in the
I agree.
committed area as well.
I agree.
It's something slight. It might be light
Right.
for them, but for us, it's huge.
So your question is what?
I guess it's not really a question.
That's fine. I want to repeat it because we're recording.
Yes, sir.
And I want to make sure that whatever you bring up is at least addressed or answered correctly on the video. Because from this point on, a lot of this training that we're doing, we're going to start recording it and put it on the online platform so that when new people come in, we don't have to do this every single time.
Yes, sir.
But I think to your point, you're absolutely right, and that's why I need all of you. Because those type of ideas, that's the things that we have to implement. And the fifth, what's on the connection card are what we call first level opportunities. In other words, if somebody came and they wanted to serve as a greeter or an usher. That's a first level opportunity. There's no approval required for that person to serve in that capacity. But you can't just jump in the kids department. There's approval required. There's a process there. There are certain positions out of that 50 that we have that we'll never tell anybody what they are because they're not volunteer. They're recruiting. In other words, 9 times out of 10, if you come to the pulpit and make a plea for somebody to serve, we need ushers in the ushers department. Anybody who's a real leader is going to see that cry for help as you're incompetent. It's just the way leaders think. And so we try not to do too much of a plea for help. What we do is we want to recruit. We want to watch different people. Everyone who's on our senior team, they didn't just jump up and say they wanted to do something. I went after them, and I worked them, and I worked them. And I said, hey, why don't you come help me do this? Do you mind? You know, they had no idea that what I asked them to help me do was this big. But it was my way of pulling them a little closer. And then once I hooked them, come on in. So, but what I'm noticing is that's not happening down the organization. People are not walking around looking saying, you know what? That person's faithful. That person keeps coming. That person is sold out. We should talk to that person. Because again, let's take greeters, for example. You can't have somebody on greeters that always look like they're sucking on lemons. You go to a Starbucks. You say what you want to about Starbucks, but they got it down with hiring people with good personalities. Because some of them act like they've been snorting coffee. They're like, hey, how you doing? How you doing? Are you having a wonderful day? Like, seriously? You're here. I need you about. But that's in their interview process. They're looking for people with that type of personality. Chick-fil-A, same thing. They're looking for people. In-N-Out Burger. They're looking for people that have the right personality. So for me, it's not so much making a plea to the people as it is us learning how to spot certain individuals and say that person would do well, and then bringing them into the fold slowly, tricking them. Inviting them. Any other questions so far about this? Anybody? Yes. How does what? How does it not fit? How does, okay, I think I understand your question. How does a worship experience or worship team fit into this, right? Okay. Have you noticed that over the last 3 weeks, we have engaged more variety of people and more variety of songs? Have you noticed that? Okay. Have you noticed the congregation's response to that? Okay. That wasn't an accident. That was on purpose, where I said, I want Faith to sing How Great Thou Art. And I said, and that's not a normal song that we sing. That's one of them old school songs. I said, but when she does, you watch how the crowd is going to go berserk. And they did. How do I know that? Because when I pull in more, do you understand? See, we need expressive arts. We need people flagging. We need people dancing. We have 70 people. The worship team's included in that number. So if I broke out the worship team and I said there's, how many people on a worship team? 9. There are 9 singers on a worship team, right? What if I brought in 2 keyboard players, 2 piano players, or 2 guitar players, and 1 drummer, and then I brought in 4 dancers and 4 people who know how to flag, and I now took the praise and worship team to 30 people. Do you have any idea what now will happen? Where we have people who can do skits and plays and different things. The worship team just tripled. Our church will triple when that happens. Because now we're able to do more, we're able to experience more, and we're able to create a worship experience that is way more dynamic. One of the problems that has been, and since we're all, it's been too much of 1 or 2 people show up here. And it hasn't been diversified amongst all of the team. And if you are playing, let's say in football, and you only got 1 bullet, 1 powerful player, you're not going to win. It's the sixth man off the bench that wins the games. It's how deep is your bench? How deep is your team? And so we have to have a number of different offensive weapons that we can say, Tanisha sing this song, Michael sing that song, and so sing this song, and Maeve sing this song. And all these different people can step up and shine. That God can use them. And as that happens, people grow. Because there's always going to be somebody to say, man, if Tanisha can get up there and do it, I can do it. Do you see what I'm saying? And it now brings growth into any ministry. And as that ministry grows, then it's able to do more. What would happen when we go to 2 services? You going to use the same ushers for both services and wear them out? You going to run both services? You're going to have somebody else. Somebody's got to run first. Somebody's got to run second. I've had people, even in different times, I've had discussions where people say, well, if we're going to 2 services, I don't want to do that. Why? If you're thinking you have to do both services, you are not thinking like I think. I'm thinking that we're going to have 150, 200, 300 people serving in the ministry of health. And if out of 300 people we can't cover 2 services, we got a problem.
Right.
Do you follow me? But when they heard 2 services and they knew we only have 40 people, they're like, how are we going to do that? Because they were not thinking, I don't care about the 40 right now. We're looking at the 100. The 120 to 150 people that'll be serving that'll need an opportunity. And now when there's 2 services, they can come and sit through a service and they can serve in the next. Now they don't have to miss out on kids. Do you see what I'm saying? See, as growth comes, more opportunity comes and it gets better and better. But we got to stop thinking like we're small potatoes, mom and pop. One person makes every decision. Some decisions got to be delegated. It's just that simple. Some things have got to be pushed out so somebody else can make it. And we got to find quality, trustworthy people that we can lay hands on and commission for the job and let them do it. And once we give it to them, their job's to make it better than it was when they got it. Questions? Anybody? These are good questions, by the way. You're helping me. Because we want to make sure that we put as much on recording as possible. Anybody got any other questions? For anybody? Okay, turn to your last page. The last page are systems of the church. Just like the body has systems, respiratory system, auditory system, we have systems at this church. There's 8 of them. The evangelism system is how we attract people to our church. The worship planning system is how we plan, implement, and evaluate the worship service at our church. The assimilation system is how we move people from a first-time guest to members at our church. The small group system is how we fill and reproduce small groups at our church. The ministry system is how we mobilize people for significant ministry at our church. The stewardship system is how do we develop extravagant givers at our church. The leadership system is how we develop leaders at all levels. And a strategy system is how we constantly evaluate and improve our church. I'll give you an example of the stewardship system. The stewardship system, if any one of you has given an offering over $500 and you have made sure that you wrote your name and your information on your offering envelope, if you've given over $500, you should have received a book called The Treasure Principle. And that book was written by Randy Alcorn. We give it to whoever has done that for free, along with a thank you card that is signed by me personally, because I appreciate anyone who gives an offering like that. But I also realize if you're going to give that type of offering, you should understand giving. Randy Alcorn was someone who Planned Parenthood came after him and tried to take everything he had, so he gave it all away, so they couldn't touch it. And when he gave it all away, the problem was that when he gave it all away, God blessed him so greatly that it all came back and then some. And so he wrote a book called, it's not called The Treasure Principle, it's called, does anybody know what the name of that book is? No. Can't think of it. All I know is the book is like the Bible. It's huge. And he broke out one chapter, and it's called The Treasure Principle, and that's the book that we give out. Because that's just one chapter, because you know how some of y'all are. You ain't going to read. Never mind. So we give you a little book, so you can read it very quickly. and get the point. But what I'm trying to help you understand is that's part of the system. So every time somebody gives over 500, it triggers that needs to happen. I then sign a card, and then there are certain things that go on from there. There's a system associated with that. Our assimilation system, when someone comes for the first time, they get a handwritten note from me, they get a $5 Starbucks card, and it gets sent to their home. And then the next time they come, second time visitor, we have another letter that goes out to them. There's a system in place. When they, after 30 days have gone by, we send out another letter with a Sonic gift card. So we have a system that's in place that deals with people when they come for the first time, the second time, when they've been here, or they came 30 days ago, 60 days ago. We have a CD we send out, how to study your Bible. We have different things that we do that is systematized, that happens automatically. Do you follow what I'm saying? Everything we do should have a system that moves people from one place to the next. Our evangelism system, how do we attract people to the church? Our worship planning system, how do we plan the service? I mean, again, this was something that we consciously did over the last 3 weeks. We said, we want to see when we start throwing out things that people don't expect, how do they respond to it? And the congregation went ballistic. We knew it was coming. But this is part of a system of how we evaluate and implement and change. So these are all the systems that are in place. I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they don't need to be tweaked. I'm just telling you we have them. And they do need to be tweaked. They are not perfect, and they need to be changed and developed into the next level so that we get what we're looking for. Because the truth of the matter is, when you have a thermostat in the room and you set the thermostat to 80, guess what temperature it goes to? Shocking. So then that means the results we're getting today, we set the thermostat there. And I'm trying to tell you, we got to turn this thing, we got to ratchet it up a notch. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So before we dismiss, because that's it, you can stop with the recording. Are there